In the peaceful galaxy, where countless species lived in harmony, nothing could prepare anyone for the arrival of humanity. For centuries, the galaxy had known peace. Different species had worked together, building alliances, creating trade routes, and living without the fear of war. Every planet was a small piece of a vast, interconnected web. But all that changed when the humans arrived. At first, no one noticed. The ships appeared silently, like shadows in the dark corners of space. They didn't make any noise, didn't announce their arrival in any way. They just appeared, one by one, on the outskirts of the galaxy, far away from the major planets, hidden in the depths of the galaxy's outer regions. The first signs that something was wrong came when a few systems went dark. The outposts in these systems stopped transmitting their usual messages. Ships that were meant to deliver supplies and reports didn't return. At first, it was only a few isolated systems. No one knew what to make of it. A few thought it was some kind of strange cosmic storm. Others assumed it was some technical glitch or a misunderstanding. But then the reports came in from further outposts, then from military fleets that patrolled the outer rim. Something was happening. A few brave scouts were sent to investigate, but they didn't return. The transmissions they had sent out were filled with confusion, fear, and unfinished thoughts. The scouts had reported seeing something, a fleet of strange, massive ships. They were different from anything the galaxy had seen before. There was no sign of life aboard. There was no communication, no signals, just the eerie presence of ships that seemed to be made of cold metal and dark shapes. Then, a message arrived. It was a simple one. It was a transmission from the fleet, coming through to a small outpost on the far side of the galaxy. The words were chilling in their simplicity. Humanity has arrived. The message didn't explain anything. It didn't say what the humans wanted, why they had come, or where they were. It just announced their presence. For many in the galaxy, this message was just the beginning. No one knew what it meant, but it had a weight to it. The words echoed in the minds of those who received them. The galaxy's peaceful way of life was about to be shattered, and no one knew how or why. The first response to this message was panic. Some species who had lived peacefully for millennia were frightened. They had heard of humans before. They were a young species. They had only recently discovered space travel, and they were known for their fierce determination to survive. But no one expected them to come with such a heavy hand. What did humanity has arrived really mean? Could they be here to negotiate? Were they here for war? Was this some kind of trick? The question spread like wildfire. The galaxy's leaders held secret meetings, trying to figure out what humanity's true intentions were. But answers didn't come. All they had were the strange ships sitting silently in space. Months passed with no further word from the humans. It was as if they were just waiting. Some species sent scouts to try to learn more, but these scouts never returned. The galaxy's military forces were put on high alert, but no one could figure out where humanity's fleet was, or even how many ships they had. Their technology was unlike anything anyone had seen before. They could stay hidden, appear from nowhere, and seem to move faster than expected. All the while, the humans said nothing. The only communication came from the occasional transmission, repeating the same message. Humanity has arrived. As time went on, small colonies and planets began to fall silent one by one. First, there was the distant mining colony on the edge of the galaxy. Then, a research station deep in the outer rim. They had all been destroyed. No one knew how or why. The survivors who managed to escape reported seeing nothing. No ships, no fighters, no weapons. Just the silence. The fear was starting to spread throughout the galaxy. One day, a fleet from a neighboring star system was dispatched to investigate the human fleet. This was a highly advanced force made up of the galaxy's best soldiers, fleet commanders, and warships. They had prepared for every possible encounter. But when they arrived at the location where humanity's fleet was last seen, they found nothing but emptiness. The fleet was gone. For days, they searched through the deep space, scanning for any sign of the humans. But it was like they had disappeared entirely. Just when the fleet was about to return, the message came again, this time clearer than ever before. Humanity has arrived. It was at that moment that everyone knew something terrible was coming. The message wasn't a greeting, nor a declaration of peace. It was an announcement of something far darker. Humanity had come, and they had not come for peace. The galaxy's leaders finally realized that the humans were not here to make friends or trade. They were here for something else, a purpose that no one could understand. By now, the panic had spread. Some species believed that humanity was preparing to invade the galaxy. Others thought that the humans were just a strange, unpredictable force that would stop at nothing to destroy everything in their path. The military forces of the galaxy began to prepare, but there was one problem. They had no idea what they were up against. The humans hadn't attacked yet, but there was a growing feeling that it was only a matter of time before they did. At that point, it became clear that humanity had no interest in diplomacy. Their silence was not one of peace, but one of calculation. They were watching, learning, and waiting for the right moment. Every move, every decision made by the galaxy's species was being observed by these silent, deadly visitors. It was only a matter of time before humanity would strike, and no one knew how or when. The galaxy had never faced anything like this before. In the blink of an eye, the quiet, peaceful way of life was shattered. The arrival of humanity had begun to turn the stars into a battleground. The silence was broken, but no one could understand the sound it would make when the humans finally decided to move. The first part of the story ends with the galaxy in chaos. No one knows what will happen next, but it's clear that everything is about to change. The galaxy, once united in peace, now faces the terrifying unknown that is humanity. And as the first signs of war begin to show, the fate of the galaxy hangs in the balance, with no one knowing who will survive humanity's ruthless war machine. The news of humanity's silent approach spread across the galaxy like wildfire, but no one could understand the full scope of the threat. The galaxy's leaders convened in secret meetings, sending out more scouts to investigate. Yet no one came back with solid answers. Humanity's fleet seemed to move through the stars with precision, appearing in one sector and then vanishing before anyone could catch a glimpse of them. The few who saw the fleet could barely comprehend what they were seeing. Massive, dark ships that looked like war machines built for destruction. They weren't like anything the galaxy had seen before, and the fear they brought with them was unlike anything anyone had ever experienced. Then the first attack happened. It wasn't a sudden explosion or a massive battle. It wasn't even a direct confrontation. The humans, it seemed, didn't need to fight the way others did. Instead, they slowly began to isolate their targets. Entire systems went dark, their stars and planets seemingly abandoned. No ships or ship's debris, no signs of any sort of battle. Just silence. The galaxy had never seen a force that could strike without a sound, without leaving a trace behind. The first system to fall was Ryle, a small colony, not important enough for most species to care, but it was a symbol. When its communication relay stopped transmitting, it raised alarms. The local fleet was dispatched to check on the colony, but when they arrived, they found only the empty, silent remains. No traces of life, no signs of a struggle. The buildings were intact, the infrastructure untouched. It was as if the people had just vanished, without a fight or a word. No one could explain it. The humans had not attacked. At least, not directly. They had simply made the colony disappear. The message was clear. Humanity had arrived, and they had come to take what they wanted, without asking for permission. Then something even stranger happened. Another fleet was sent, this time a much larger, more experienced force, from one of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations. They thought they were prepared. They thought they could handle the humans. But as soon as they entered the sector where Ryle once stood, they found themselves trapped. Their ships were unable to move, their weapons wouldn't fire, and their communication systems were hijacked. It wasn't a direct attack. They were stuck in space, immobilized by some unseen force. The human fleet showed up then, silently surrounding the immobilized ships. For hours, the forces could do nothing but sit in the dark, waiting for a move that never came. And yet, the fear that crept in was suffocating. The humans had shown nothing but cold indifference. They didn't need to fight with weapons or ships. They controlled the situation with terrifying ease. At this point, something crucial began to dawn on the galaxy's leaders. The humans weren't just another species. They weren't just another fleet of invaders. They were something new, something different, something the galaxy had never seen before. Their technology was unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. Their ships didn't just fight. They altered the very environment around them, turning space itself into an unpredictable battleground. No one could predict their moves. No one knew where they would strike next, and no one knew how to stop them. In a desperate attempt to understand their enemy, the galaxy's most advanced scientists and strategists began to analyze the humans' technology. They quickly realized something terrifying. Humanity's war machines were designed to adapt and evolve. Each battle, each encounter was a test, and with every new piece of information, the humans were learning how to strike harder, faster, and more efficiently. It was as if they were built for war, not just to win, but to become the ultimate force in the galaxy. The humans didn't need to dominate by numbers. They were more than capable of winning with strategy, stealth, and overwhelming force. And what was worse, humanity seemed to be holding back, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And so, the galaxy's military leaders scrambled to form alliances, to unite against this new threat. But it was too late. Humanity had already begun to encircle their most vulnerable systems, preparing for something far worse than anything anyone could imagine. The message that humanity had sent out, "Humanity has arrived," was now understood by everyone. It wasn't a warning or a declaration. It was a promise. Humanity had come to claim the galaxy, and they would stop at nothing to do so. There would be no negotiations, no diplomacy. There would be no mercy. The galaxy's fleets gathered, preparing to make their stand, but they knew deep down that it wasn't enough. The humans were different. They were unstoppable. The galaxy had never seen a force like this before. The quiet dread that filled the air was palpable. The galaxy had only ever known peace and cooperation between species. Now, it was facing a ruthless, unyielding force that had no care for alliances or mercy. The day the humans launched their first true attack came without warning. The quiet had been there for so long, the silence suffocating. Then suddenly, the ships appeared, overwhelming in their size and number, and it was clear that the galaxy had underestimated them. Humanity's war machines arrived not with a blast of fire or an overwhelming wave of destruction, but with precision, methodical in every move. The ships didn't need to shoot a single shot. Every enemy fleet they encountered was paralyzed, rendered helpless, unable to fight back. The galaxy's leaders tried to form a unified front. The larger fleets came together, the once divided species joining forces to stop this new and terrifying enemy. But despite their best efforts, humanity's war machine seemed unstoppable. Each time they faced the humans, the attackers were one step ahead. They understood the galaxy's tactics better than the galaxy itself did. They knew the weaknesses of every species and exploited them with ruthless efficiency. As the first wave of attacks unfolded, the galaxy's brightest minds and bravest soldiers were forced to confront the undeniable truth. They were fighting something they couldn't understand, something that had arrived with a single, terrifying message: humanity has arrived. And now, the galaxy was beginning to realize that they had no choice but to face the unstoppable force that had entered their world. The humans were here, and the question wasn't how to stop them. It was whether anyone would survive at all. Humanity's true power was finally revealed, and it was far beyond anything the galaxy had imagined. The first wave of attacks left the galaxy stunned. But what followed was even more shocking. Humanity wasn't just waging a war, they were rewriting the rules of battle itself. The galaxy's best fleets, armed with the most advanced technology, couldn't even hold their ground. The human war machines adapted to every move, countering their strategies and exploiting every weakness. The galaxy had thought itself prepared for anything, but humanity's ruthless, cold precision shattered those assumptions. The first clue that humanity wasn't like any other species in the galaxy came during the battle over the Zornan Nebula. The Zornan system had long been a strategic point for the galaxy's united forces, and they had stationed their most experienced fleets there, hoping to defend against any threat. But when humanity's fleet arrived, the battle was over before it had even started. The human ships were unlike any seen before. Massive and imposing, they had no markings, no symbols of allegiance. They were cold and efficient, streamlined in their design, and eerily silent. The ships didn't fire on the enemy directly, at least not in the way the galaxy's ships were used to. Instead, they surrounded the Zornan fleet, cutting off all communications and blocking all attempts at escape. The fleet's captain, a veteran of countless battles, ordered an immediate counterattack. The human ships seemed to have no weak points, and every weapon fired by the galaxy's forces either missed or had no effect. The Zornan fleet began to retreat, but their ships were crippled by an invisible force, something that stopped them from maneuvering or even communicating with each other. It was as if the human fleet had hacked into their systems and rendered them useless. One by one, the ships were taken out, not with overwhelming firepower, but with methodical precision. There were no explosions or massive space battles, just the quiet, methodical destruction of everything in its path. In the end, the Zornan fleet was entirely wiped out, with no survivors to tell the tale. The humans didn't need to overpower their enemies. They didn't even need to fight in the traditional sense. They were masters of psychological warfare, exploiting every fear and hesitation of their enemies. The galaxy's best forces, who had once thought themselves invincible, began to panic. The galaxy's warriors were trained for open combat, for battles where weapons and strength decided the outcome. But the humans fought a different kind of war, one where every action was calculated, every move designed to break the spirit of their opponents before they even realized what was happening. The next battle came without warning. The humans struck at the heart of the galaxy, targeting the capital of the Galan Empire, one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the known universe. The Galan Empire had long been a symbol of power and pride, but as the human ships appeared in their space, everything changed. The Galan fleet gathered to meet the threat head-on, their ships lined up in a show of force. But it didn't take long for them to realize that this would be no ordinary battle. Humanity's war machines arrived in perfect silence, their ships undetectable until it was far too late. The Galan fleet fired first, sending a volley of energy blasts toward the human ships, but the shots simply vanished into the vastness of space. It was like they had no effect. Then, without warning, the Galan ships found themselves locked in place, unable to move, unable to fight back. The humans didn't even need to fire a shot. They had taken control of the Galan fleet's systems, rendering them helpless with a single strike. It was at that moment that the Galan Emperor realized the terrible truth. The humans were not just invaders. They were conquerors, masters of a war that didn't require destruction. Their technology was so advanced that they could control entire fleets without ever firing a single shot. They could turn an enemy's greatest strength into its greatest weakness. And worst of all, the humans had no intention of stopping. The next phase of humanity's plan became clear. They weren't just here to fight. They were here to take over, to turn the galaxy's most powerful species into pawns in their game of conquest. The humans were not just after land or resources. They were after control, after the very heart of the galaxy itself. They were creating an army, but not one made of soldiers or ships. Humanity was turning every species they encountered into part of their war machine. They didn't just destroy. They absorbed, they transformed, and they made sure that nothing stood in their way. It was a horrifying realization. The galaxy had always been united in the belief that no one could dominate the entire galaxy, that no species was strong enough to control everything. But the humans weren't just fighting for dominance. They were fighting for evolution. Their war machines weren't just weapons. They were part of a system designed to adapt and absorb everything they encountered. Each battle, each victory, made them stronger. They learned from their enemies, adapting their strategies and technologies until they became an unstoppable force. But as humanity's power continued to grow, cracks began to show. Some of the galaxy's bravest leaders refused to bow to the inevitable. They began to organize a resistance, a final stand against humanity's unyielding march across the stars. The galaxy's most advanced minds worked together, desperate to find a way to stop the human war machine. They studied the humans' technology, hoping to discover some weakness, some flaw that they could exploit. But every time they thought they had found something, the humans adapted, and their war machines became stronger. The humans, it seemed, were always one step ahead. Then the first real signs of resistance began to emerge. A small group of rebels, made up of soldiers from different species, managed to sneak behind enemy lines. They infiltrated one of humanity's ships, hoping to discover something, anything, that could stop the humans. What they found shocked them. The ship wasn't just a war machine. It was alive. The human fleet's ships were not built the way other ships were. They were part of a living organism, a symbiotic connection between the humans and their machines. The humans had become one with their war machines, and the more they fought, the more they evolved. It was an evolution that no one had seen coming. Humanity wasn't just winning. They were transforming the very nature of war, of life itself. And with each battle they fought, they became more than just a species. They became something else entirely. But even as the galaxy's last hope began to rise, humanity's power continued to grow. The galaxy had never seen anything like this before, and now it was faced with a terrifying question. Could anyone survive against humanity's ruthless war machine? Or was the galaxy doomed to fall under the cold, unrelenting force that humanity had brought to the stars? The galaxy's leaders, now desperate and fractured, could no longer ignore the terrifying truth. Humanity was unstoppable. Despite their best efforts to form alliances, to rally fleets, and to hold their ground, they were facing an enemy that not only surpassed them in technology, but had adapted in ways they could never have predicted. Humanity's war machines were no longer just vessels of destruction. They were living, breathing entities, each one more powerful than the last. And the more the galaxy fought, the stronger humanity became. In the heart of the galaxy, a resistance began to form. A small but determined group of warriors, scientists, and former military leaders who refused to give in. They called themselves the Reclaimers. The Reclaimers had one goal: to find a way to destroy humanity's war machines, to break the unholy connection between the humans and their ships, and to bring peace back to the galaxy. It was a long shot, but it was the only chance they had left. The Reclaimers had gathered in secret, hidden on a planet deep in the Outer Rim, far from the watchful eyes of humanity's fleets. They pooled their knowledge, their resources, and their courage, hoping to devise a plan to turn the tide. The first thing they realized was that humanity's technology was not something they could just copy or replicate. Every time they thought they had discovered a weakness, humanity adapted, making their technology even more lethal. They had to think differently. They had to attack the very heart of humanity's war machine, the connection between the humans and their ships. The humans had achieved something no other species had ever done. They had merged with their technology. Their ships were not just controlled by humans. They were extensions of their will. The human pilots weren't just commanding the ships. They were becoming the ships themselves, their minds intertwined with the cold metal and deadly weapons. To defeat humanity, the Reclaimers needed to sever this connection. But how could they do that when the humans' technology was so far ahead of anything the galaxy had ever seen? After months of research, the reclaimers discovered a disturbing fact. Humanity's ships weren't built using traditional methods. They were grown, not constructed. Each ship was a living organism, part machine, part biological entity. The reclaimers realized that the key to stopping humanity lay in severing the bond between the humans and their ships. They needed to find a way to disrupt the symbiotic relationship that allowed humans to control their war machines. But doing so would be no easy task. It would require infiltrating one of humanity's ships, something that had never been done before. The plan was risky, dangerous, and potentially suicidal. But it was the only chance they had. The reclaimers knew that they needed a volunteer to infiltrate one of the human ships and plant a device that could sever the connection between the humans and their war machines. The device, however, was experimental. No one knew if it would work or if it would destroy the ship entirely. The fate of the galaxy rested on this one mission. A young warrior named Jalen, a former fleet commander who had lost everything to humanity's relentless assault, volunteered for the mission. He had lost his home, his family, and his comrades in the war, and now he had nothing left but a burning desire for revenge. He knew the risks, but he also knew that this was the galaxy's only hope. Jalen and a small team of reclaimers set out on a daring mission to infiltrate one of humanity's war machines. They managed to get close to the ship, using stealth technology to remain undetected. As they boarded the ship, they were struck by the eerie silence that filled its halls. The ship wasn't like anything they had ever seen before. It was alive, pulsing with energy, its walls seemingly shifting and changing as they moved through it. The crew of the ship wasn't just a group of soldiers. It was a single, unified force. The humans on board were not just operating the ship, they were part of it. The reclaimers pressed forward, moving deeper into the heart of the ship. They encountered no resistance, but the tension was unbearable. They knew that at any moment, the humans could detect their presence. Jalen's heart raced as he led the team through the labyrinthine corridors, desperately trying to reach the central control room. It was there that they hoped to plant the device that would sever the connection between the humans and their ship. As they approached the control room, they encountered the ship's captain, a human whose presence seemed to command the entire vessel. The captain was not a mere soldier. He was something more. His eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity, and his voice carried a strange, almost hypnotic quality. He didn't speak to them as an enemy, but as if he already knew who they were and why they were there. There was no fear in his eyes, only a calm, almost serene certainty. "You think you can stop us?" the captain asked, his voice echoing through the empty halls. "You cannot. We are not just humans. We are beyond that. We have merged with our machines, become one with them. You are fighting something that has no weakness. You are fighting evolution itself." Jalen and the reclaimers stood frozen, their mission hanging in the balance. The captain's words were like a cold chill running down their spines. They had known that humanity's war machine was powerful, but they hadn't fully understood just how far they had come. The humans weren't just a species. They were an unstoppable force of nature, evolving beyond their physical limitations, becoming something more than anyone could comprehend. But Jalen didn't hesitate. He knew what they had to do. With a final, determined glance at his comrades, he activated the device. The ship shuddered as the connection between the humans and their war machines was severed. The lights flickered, and for a brief moment, the eerie silence was broken by the sound of the ship's systems grinding to a halt. The humans on board began to collapse, their bodies twitching as the bond between them and their ship was broken. It was a victory, but a hollow one. As the reclaimers made their escape, they knew that this was only one small step. Humanity's war machines were still out there, waiting, adapting. They had disrupted the connection, but they had not destroyed the humans' ability to evolve and adapt. And as they looked toward the future, they realized that humanity's arrival had only just begun. The galaxy had not seen the end of humanity's ruthless war machine. It had only seen the beginning. The fate of the galaxy now lay in the hands of the reclaimers and those who were willing to fight. The war had entered a new phase, one where every move would count, and the outcome was uncertain. The battle for the galaxy had begun, and humanity's ruthless march across the stars was far from over. The galaxy was teetering on the edge of destruction, but even in the face of overwhelming odds, hope had begun to stir. The Reclaimers' victory, though small, had shown that humanity's war machines were not invincible. They had found a crack in the foundation, a way to sever the connection between the humans and their ships. But the question now was whether that crack could be exploited, or if it would be sealed off and forgotten as humanity adapted once again. The Reclaimers' success did not go unnoticed. The galaxy's leaders, once divided, now realized the magnitude of the threat they faced. The galaxy's greatest minds and fiercest warriors were gathering for a final stand, a united front to halt humanity's expansion. But as they prepared for war, they were haunted by the question: how could they defeat a force that learned and evolved with every battle? Jalin, who had played a pivotal role in the infiltration of the human ship, found himself at the heart of this new resistance. His experiences with the Reclaimers had made him a leader among them, and now, more than ever, his resolve was being tested. He had lost everything: his home, his family, his comrades, and the weight of that loss had fueled his determination. But as he stood with the other leaders, staring into the face of an enemy that was both ruthless and terrifyingly intelligent, doubt began to creep into his mind. Was it even possible to stop humanity, or was the galaxy doomed to fall under their rule? While the Reclaimers planned their next move, humanity continued to grow stronger, adapting in ways no one could have predicted. Their war machines, once so overwhelming, had begun to shift, to change, to become something even more terrifying. Humanity had begun to experiment with their connection to their ships, enhancing their abilities to communicate with their war machines, making them even more powerful and unpredictable. The human fleet, under the command of General Thorn, a leader whose cold, calculating mind had already brought so many systems to their knees, began to mobilize for a final assault. Their target, the heart of the galaxy, the core systems where the remaining strongholds of resistance had gathered. If they succeeded, the war would be over. The galaxy would fall, its civilizations absorbed into the growing human empire. And humanity, with its ruthless efficiency, would reign supreme across the stars. As the human fleet moved toward their final target, Jalin and the Reclaimers made a bold decision. They would take the fight directly to humanity's homeworld, the very place where it all began. It was a risky move, one that could very well end their rebellion, but they had no other choice. If they could strike at humanity's heart, they might be able to find the key to stopping the war machines once and for all. The journey to Earth, humanity's homeworld, was perilous. The Reclaimers had to navigate through space, avoiding detection by the countless human ships that patrolled the galaxy. It was a race against time. As they neared Earth, they realized just how massive the human presence had become. The planet was surrounded by a vast network of warships, defense systems, and satellites. It was clear that humanity was ready for anything, and they were not going to let anyone reach their home. When the Reclaimers finally arrived on Earth's doorstep, they found themselves facing an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered. The human military was not just fighting a war. They were fighting for their very survival. Every ship, every soldier, every person was now a part of humanity's war machine, bound to its will. The very air on Earth seemed charged with an energy that made the Reclaimers' hearts race. They were in the belly of the beast now, and they knew that the final battle for the galaxy had begun. In a daring raid, the Reclaimers infiltrated Earth's heavily guarded defenses, landing deep within the human heartland. As they made their way through the underground tunnels, they encountered strange sights, machines that were part biological, part technological, and humans whose bodies had been altered to better bond with their ships. The human race had gone beyond mere technology. They had become something else entirely, a fusion of man and machine. At the core of this monstrous empire lay the General, the mind that had orchestrated humanity's ruthless campaign across the galaxy. General Thorn was not just a strategist, he was the embodiment of humanity's war machine. His connection to the fleet was unlike any other. He could feel the movements of every ship, every soldier, and every weapon. His mind had become one with the galaxy-spanning war network, and the Reclaimers realized that to defeat humanity, they would have to face not just a human leader, but the very essence of humanity's evolution. The final confrontation between Jalen and General Thorn came deep within the bowels of Earth's capital, in a hidden underground command center. The room hummed with energy, the walls lined with technology that seemed to pulse and breathe. Thorn stood there, waiting, as if he had expected this moment for a long time. "You think you can stop us?" Thorn's voice echoed through the chamber, cold and devoid of emotion. "You are nothing more than a relic of the past. Humanity has evolved beyond you, beyond all of you. You can't stop what's already been set in motion." Jalen, his heart heavy with the weight of everything he had lost, stepped forward. "We are the galaxy's last hope," he said, his voice filled with determination. "We will fight until the end, even if it means giving everything." Thorn smiled, a cruel, knowing smile. "Your fight is pointless. I've seen your plans, Jalen. I've seen every move you will make before you even make it. You are too late. Humanity has already won." But Jalen didn't flinch. The battle that followed was fierce, not just a physical fight, but a battle of wills. Jalen and Thorn clashed with everything they had. Jalen fighting for the galaxy, for the future, for those who had died at humanity's hands, and Thorn fighting to preserve the evolution he had set in motion, to solidify humanity's place as the ultimate power in the universe. The fight ended not with a final blow, but with a devastating realization. The device the Reclaimers had brought to sever the connection between humanity and their war machines had worked. But it hadn't just severed the connection, it had exposed the truth. Humanity had become something more than just a species, more than just an empire. They had become a living, breathing entity, one that could not be stopped, one that could not be reasoned with. As Jalen stood over Thorn's fallen body, the fate of the galaxy seemed clear. The war was over. Humanity had won. But even in victory, there was no joy. The galaxy was forever changed, its future uncertain. The rise of humanity had brought about a new era, one where the line between man and machine had blurred, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity's ruthless war machine had claimed the stars, and no one could deny that it had succeeded. The galaxy had fought valiantly, but in the end, it had succumbed to the inevitable. And now, humanity would reign, not just as conquerors, but as the new rulers of a universe where survival was no longer a choice, it was a necessity.